I didn't find out my wife was hiding something through a text message or a lipstick stain. I found out in the parking lot of a 24-hour diner at 11:47 on a rainy Tuesday night, with gas station coffee going cold in my cup holder and the windshield fogging from my breath. Claire stood under a broken neon sign, her coat pulled tight. A man I had never seen before stood in front of her in an old gray hoodie. He was younger than us, thin and worn down, like life had been taking pieces from him for years. Then Claire reached into her purse and handed him a yellow envelope. He took it with both hands. A second later, he pulled her into a hug. I sat there with my palms flat on the steering wheel. Rain tapped hard against the roof. I turned the wipers off, not because it helped me see better, but because the silence inside the truck suddenly felt important. That was the first moment I thought my marriage was ending. Before that night, I would have told anyone I was a good husband, not perfect, but steady. The kind of man who showed up for work, paid bills on time, changed furnace filters before they turned black, and kept jumper cables behind the truck seat because somebody always needed them eventually. My name is Daniel. I was 38 then, working as an HVAC technician around Columbus, Ohio. Claire was 36 and worked as the librarian at an elementary school. We had been married 9 years. We didn't have children, though not for lack of trying. After the last appointment, when the doctor spoke gently and Claire stared at the floor, I decided the kindest thing I could do was not bring it up anymore. I thought silence was protection. I see now it was distance wearing a work shirt. We didn't fight much. I used to feel proud of that. Other couples screamed. We kept things calm, but calm can be a locked door too. Claire started taking phone calls on the back porch in late October. At first, I barely noticed. I'd come in from work, shoulders sore, smelling like metal and dust, and she'd be outside with one arm wrapped around herself, phone pressed to her ear. When she saw me through the glass, she'd turn slightly away. School stuff? I asked the first time. She nodded too quickly. Parent asking about the reading fair. Then the calls got shorter and stranger. They came after dinner, sometimes right before bed. She'd look at the screen, hesitate, and walk out of the room. Once, I stepped into the kitchen while she was on the phone. Her voice dropped so low I couldn't make out the words. She looked at me, turned the phone against her chest, and said, "I'll call you back. Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said. "Just a parent." But there was no teacher voice in her face. Just fear, hidden too fast. It was from a cheap motel on the south side of town. Paid in cash. I folded it once and put it back where I found it. Then I heard her say, "You cannot come to the house. Daniel doesn't know anything." She came back inside and found me folding towels on the couch. "Cold out there," I said. "Yeah. Everything okay?" Her answer came a beat late. "It's complicated." I waited for more. She gave me nothing. That was when something in me changed from worried to watchful. On Thursday, she told me she had a fundraising meeting with teachers after school. I was supposed to be on a late service call, but the customer canceled, and I found myself driving past the elementary school without admitting what I was doing. The parking lot was empty. I didn't call her. That might have been the first truly dishonest thing I did. She walked in at 8:30 carrying a tote bag of library books. "Long meeting," she said. I nodded, chewing a sandwich I couldn't taste. Later that night, while she slept with her back turned to me, I went downstairs for water. Her purse was hanging on the chair. I stood in front of it for almost a full minute, hating myself, then opened it. Inside was a folded piece of paper with one name and a number, even no last name. I put it back exactly the way I found it and sat at the kitchen table until the ice melted in my glass. I should have asked one honest question before I opened drawers, checked accounts, and followed tail tits lights across town. I should have said, "You seem scared. Can you tell me what is happening?" But asking would have required trust, and I had chosen suspicion because suspicion made me feel safer. The name became a hook in my mind. Evan, the man from the calls, the hoodie, the motel. The person who couldn't come to our house because Daniel didn't know anything. And I, because I was afraid of the answer, kept choosing surveillance over a question. The next Tuesday, I asked my dispatcher if I could swap my late calls for an early shift. I told him my shoulder was acting up. That was a lie. My shoulder was fine. My marriage was not. I parked near Claire's school before dismissal and watched her come out carrying her tote bag and a navy coat over her arm. For 1 second, seeing her look so tired, I almost drove away. Then her phone rang. She answered, listened, and walked faster to her car. I followed her. She turned into the lot of a 24-hour diner. I parked across the street behind a pharmacy that had been shut down for years. Then she reached across and placed her hand over his. My stomach dropped so hard I had to close my eyes. When I opened them, Claire was crying, wiping her face with a napkin. I lifted my phone and took a picture through the rain-streaked windshield. The image came out blurred, their faces smeared by water and distance. It didn't matter. I knew what I had seen, or I thought I did. A few minutes later, they came outside. I drove into the diner lot and parked near the far corner, partly behind a delivery van. Claire stood under the neon sign, reached into her purse, and took out the yellow envelope. He accepted it like it hurt him to need it. Then he hugged her. His face pressed against her shoulder. Claire closed her eyes. I watched my wife hold another man in the rain and felt something inside me go very still. I didn't confront her that night. At the time, it felt like control. I drove home before she left the lot and sat in our driveway until my breathing sounded normal. When Claire came in 20 minutes later, I was at the sink washing a plate that was already clean. "You're home early," she said. Job wrapped up. She stood behind me long enough that I could feel she wanted to say something. Then she went upstairs. On Friday, I came home early again. Claire was not there yet. I don't know what I expected to find. A love letter, maybe. Some proof clean enough to let me be angry without guilt. Inside was a small folder. At the bottom was a card, old and soft at the fold. "I promise I won't let him disappear again." I read that sentence so many times the words stopped looking like words. I did not turn it over. I was afraid it would be him. Evan. Some old love from before me. Some unfinished story she had kept in a drawer until the day she was ready to leave. When Claire came home, I was sitting at the kitchen table. She noticed the drawer first, then the folder, then my face. "Daniel," she said carefully. "Who's Evan?" All the color left her. She placed her purse on the counter very slowly. "Where did you get that name?" Wrong question. Her eyes moved to the folder. "You went through my things. Who's Evan?" She looked toward the window over the sink, as if the answer might be waiting outside in the dark. "Someone from before I met you." That was all she said. Something hot and bitter rose in me. "Are you leaving this weekend?" She swallowed. "I have to help him." "Help him how?" "It's not what you think." I almost laughed. Because those words sounded exactly like the kind of line a guilty person says when the truth is already standing in the room. Friday night, she packed the navy suitcase. I stood by the stove while a pot of soup trembled on low heat behind me. I put my phone on the kitchen table and slid the blurry photo toward her. "Who is he?" She froze. For a long moment, only the stove made noise. Then the soup bubbled over and hissed against the burner. Claire looked at the picture. Her hand went to her mouth. "You followed me." I asked first. "You followed me, Daniel." "I found the motel receipt, the cash withdrawals, the hoodie. I heard you say he couldn't come here because I didn't know anything. So yes, I followed you." She sat down like her legs had stopped working. "I wanted to tell you." "Then tell me." Her lips parted. Nothing came out. "Is he the reason you've been lying to me?" "No." "Is he the reason you're taking money out?" "Daniel, please." "Is he the reason you packed a bag?" She shut her eyes. "This is bigger than us." That sentence broke something open in me. "Bigger than us," I repeated. 9 years of marriage, and I get a motel receipt and a man in a parking lot. It's not an affair. Then what is it? She started crying. Quietly, the way she had in the diner. "I can't do this with you when you're looking at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you've already decided who I am." I pointed at the photo. "You decided. Every time you walked outside to take a call, every time you lied, every time you handed him money and came home to sleep next to me." She flinched. "And then I said the thing I would give anything to take back. Is this because we couldn't have kids? You couldn't build a life with me, so you're trying one with someone else?" Claire went completely still. No sob. Just stillness. Claire looked at me, and I saw that I had not just hurt her. I had reached for the sharpest piece of pain in our house and used it like a tool. She took off her wedding ring. The small sound it made when she set it on the wooden table was worse than yelling. "You just proved why I didn't tell you," she said. Then she zipped the suitcase, picked it up, and walked out. I did not follow her. In the weeks before the hospital, I had mistaken quietness for peace. I had mistaken paying the mortgage for being present. I had mistaken not yelling for being kind. Sitting there with the ring on the table, I began to understand there are ways to abandon someone without ever leaving the house. The house had never sounded that empty before. The refrigerator hummed. The wall clock clicked. Her mug sat upside down beside mine. And the lipstick mark on the rim suddenly looked less like a familiar detail and more like evidence that I had been living beside a whole person I had stopped trying to know. At 6:12 the next morning, my phone buzzed on the table. The number was Ruth's, Claire's aunt. Her mother had been gone for 4 years, and Ruth was the only family member Claire still spoke to with any regularity. I almost didn't answer. Pride does that. It hands you a shovel and calls it dignity. But I picked up. "Daniel?" Ruth's voice sounded old in a way it hadn't before. "Yeah." "Is Claire with you?" I sat up. "No." "Why?" A pause. "Evan had a bad night. She brought him to St. Anne's. He panicked at the shelter and tried to leave. I thought she might have called you." The name landed differently when Ruth said it. Not like a secret lover, like family business. "Like history." "Ruth," I said, my throat dry. "Who is Evan?" The silence on the line was long enough to answer before she did. "She never told you." I closed my eyes. Ruth exhaled. "Evan is Claire's brother. Half-brother, technically. Same mother, different father." I looked across the table at Claire's ring. Claire had been 17 when her mother remarried. Evan was 5. His father was the kind of man families learn to talk around. Loud when drunk, charming when watched, gone when responsibility arrived. Claire left for college with guilt packed into every box. Evan grew up in the mess she escaped. When Claire's mother got sick, she made Claire promise one thing. If Evan ever came back and wanted a chance, Claire would not let him disappear again. She looked for him after the funeral. Ruth said, "Found nothing." Then a month ago, he called from a recovery program outside Dayton. He had no ID that matched, no steady place, no job, nobody willing to trust him. Claire has been helping him get documents, motel rooms, clothes, applications. She didn't tell you because… Ruth stopped. Because what? Because she was ashamed. And because she heard you, Daniel. I knew what she meant before she said it. At some point, I had said, people have to live with the consequences of their choices. Claire had gone quiet then. I remembered now. I thought she was tired. I didn't ask. Ruth's voice softened. She thought you would see Evan as a problem she was choosing over you. I pressed my fingers into my eyes until colors sparked behind them. After the call, I went upstairs to the closet. The framed photograph was still there. Face down under one of the library books. This time, I turned it over. I knew his face older, thinner, harder. The man in the diner. I sat on the closet floor with the photograph in my lap and felt shame move through me slowly, leaving no room to defend myself. Every clue changed shape at once. The motel was shelter. The cash was food. And a room for a man trying not to sleep outside. The hoodie was not evidence of betrayal. It was probably the only coat he owned. The birth certificate was not a new life with someone else. It was proof Evan existed on paper. The sentence on the card was not romance. It was a promise to a dying mother. And the worst piece of evidence in the whole ugly pile was not anything Claire had done. It was what I had said. Evan sat 3 chairs away, bent forward with his elbows on his knees. A plastic hospital band circled his wrist. He looked up when he saw me, then looked down again. Claire's body tightened. I talked to Ruth, I said. She nodded once. I had rehearsed an apology in the truck. It fell apart the moment I saw her. I'm sorry, I said. Her eyes stayed on the coffee cup. I am so sorry. She let out a small breath, not quite a laugh. For following me or for what you said. Both. All of it. Those are different kinds of sorry. I know. She looked at me then, and I had to stand still under the weight of it. You thought I was sleeping with my brother, she said quietly. The words hit like they should have. I didn't know he was your brother. No, she said. You didn't. Because you never asked me what I was afraid of. You investigated me like a broken furnace. I deserve that. Evan shifted in his chair but didn't speak. Claire looked down at her hands. Do you know what the worst part was? I shook my head. It wasn't that you thought I lied. I did lie. It wasn't even that you followed me. Though that scared me. Her voice cracked. It was that you took the one grief we never figured out how to carry together, and you threw it at me because you wanted to win. There was no answer to that. I sat in the chair beside her, leaving space between us. You're right. She seemed almost angry that I didn't defend myself. I have wanted to tell you about Evan for years, she said. Then I would hear you talk about people like him. Not cruelly. You don't think you're cruel, that's part of it. You just make everything sound simple. Right choice, wrong choice. Fixed, broken. Responsible, irresponsible. I looked at my hands. There was a scratch across one knuckle from a job the day before. I thought being steady was enough, I said. It can be. She turned the cup in her hands, but not when it means I have to be steady alone, too. I don't want to fix you, I said. I think that's what I always try to do. I see a problem and reach for tools. I don't know how to sit it with something I can't tighten or replace. Claire's eyes filled again, but she didn't look away. I can't make you come home, I said. I don't even know if I should ask, but I can help Evan get his paperwork together. I know a guy who manages maintenance at a warehouse on the east side. They sometimes hire people for trial shifts, no promises, just a door. Claire studied me like she was checking for the old pattern underneath the new words. That isn't a shortcut back to normal, she said. I know, and if you help him, you don't get to act like that erases what you said. I know that too. What do you want, Daniel? The honest answer was that I wanted to go back to the night before all of this. But that was not available, so I said the only thing that felt true. I want to start by not walking away just because I don't know how to do this. For the first time, Evan looked at me. His voice was rough. You don't have to help me. I know, I said. He nodded like that answer mattered more than a promise. 3 weeks later, I drove Evan to a warehouse interview in my old pickup. Evan came out of the motel wearing a clean button-down shirt I had given him. It hung loose at the shoulders. He kept tugging at the collar like it might choke him. In the truck, he said almost nothing. The heater rattled. A styrofoam cup rolled under the seat every time I turned. At a red light, I saw him rubbing his thumb against the edge of his new ID card. Claire says you fix heaters, he said finally. Among other things, he nodded. She used to say you could fix anything. I kept my eyes on the road. She was wrong about that. He almost smiled. A minute later, he said, I saw you that night at the diner. My hands tightened on the wheel, I figured. I didn't tell her. Why not? He looked out the window at a gas station sign flickering in the morning light. She already had enough to carry. There was no accusation in his voice. That made it harder. I'm sorry, I said. He shrugged, but not like it didn't matter. More like he didn't know where to put an apology. I hugged her because I was scared. I had that money and still thought I was going to mess it up before morning. I know that now. He nodded once. Knowing stuff late is still knowing, I guess. I waited in the truck for 40 minutes. I watched people come and go through the loading doors. When Evan came back out, he stood on the curb for a second, blinking in the sun. Then he gave me a thumbs up so small I almost missed it. Trial shift. Monday morning, I texted Claire from the parking lot. He got it. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Thank you. I looked at those 2 words for a long time. That night, I came home to find Claire at the kitchen table. Her wedding ring was not on her finger. It sat in the small ceramic dish beside the sink, near the black mug and the one with the faded lipstick mark. I noticed it. I did not mention it. For a while, we just ate. Then Claire told me about her mother. Not the polished version I had heard at family gatherings, but the truth. The fear, the guilt, the way she had learned to become useful so no one would notice she was terrified. She told me about Evan as a little boy hiding under tables during arguments, about leaving for college and feeling like she had saved herself by abandoning him. I listened. I kept my hands around the warm bowl and listened until she ran out of words. Then I told her what I had never said cleanly about the years we tried to have a child. I told her I stopped bringing it up because I was afraid if I touched that grief, it would swallow us. I told her I thought being strong meant giving her silence. She wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand. I thought your silence meant you were disappointed in me. That sentence hurt more than I expected. No, I said, never. But you never said that. I know. I'm not asking you to forget what I said, I told her. I don't get to decide when that stops hurting. She looked at me over the rim of her bowl. I just want the chance to become someone who asks before he assumes. Someone who listens before he tries to fix the room. Claire gave a tired smile. That may take a while, I figured. I may stay at Ruth's a little longer, I figured that too. A few months passed. Her ring stayed in the ceramic dish for a long time. Then one morning, I came downstairs before work and found a yellow sticky note on the fridge. Not love you. Not we're okay. Just 6 words in Claire's neat blue handwriting. Ask before you assume. I stood there in my work pants and undershirt, lunch still open on the counter, reading it like instructions for a machine I had never learned how to operate. Claire came into the kitchen behind me. Her hair was damp from the shower. She reached past me for her mug. Too direct, she asked. I shook my head. No. She poured coffee. The old heater knocked once in the wall, steady and familiar. I looked at her hand. The ring was still not there. Then I looked at the note again. No, I said. I think it's exactly right. She leaned against the counter beside me, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the warmth of her shoulder. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. And this time, the silence did not feel like a locked door. It felt like a room we were finally both standing in.